Hey everybody, Adam Savage here in my cave, and I'm answering some questions from you fans, and specifically from Tested Patrons. Jace Brown wants to know, this is a great question, what is your research process like when buying a really expensive tool like the mill? What goes into your selection process? Yeah, so this is the thing about an expensive tool. Before you go and buy it, I actually owned three little mills before I bought this one. The first one was a compact COMPAC 5. I think this is a European company. They make really, really great equipment. I had a lathe mill combo from them that I bought from Mitch Romanowski back in the mid-90s. And that thing was precise as hell. I think I ended up selling it to Pierre, my friend Pierre, one of the original members of the R2-D2 Builders group, the secret internal Industrial Light and Magic R2-D2 Builders group. The second one I had was one we used on the Matrix sequels. And that was, I think, I'm not even sure what kind of mill. It might have been a smaller Bridgeport, like a 3/4 size Bridgeport. It was weird. It was a weird machine, and I picked it up for a pretty reasonable price from a friend of Chico McMurtry's, I think. At the end of the Matrix, it was an old machine already long in the tooth, and I think I got rid of it, or a whole bunch of stuff got stripped off of it at the end of that film. I can't quite remember. And then the third one was an Enco, E-N-C-O, benchtop mill, which I had here right where the drill press was. Drill press currently used to be my benchtop mill before I had the big Bridgeport. And each of those machines taught me a lot about machining. They also taught me that, I mean, that Emco, the Compact 5, and they have a Compact 6, Compact 7, and other models, they come out of the box at a high level of precision and usability. But an Enco benchtop mill does not. It requires some real finessing to tune it to be a highly accurate machine. And when you tune it, they are fantastic. But there's a bit of lead up. I'm getting to the answer as I frame this, but spending $3 grand on this thing behind me, which I think is what it cost me, I finally did it when I knew I would use the hell out of it. And I knew what I really needed out of it. I thought that the benchtop Enco would suffice, but it didn't. And it was difficult enough to use that I noticed there were many opportunities to use it that I didn't take because I found setting it up to be a little bit tiring and dumb. And this is the most roundabout way of saying that I didn't buy this until I really knew that I needed it. So the initial process was one of just sort of getting to know my own self as a machinist. If I had taken an internship at a machine shop, I probably would have bought one way earlier because I would have seen exactly what it could do. And certainly I used Bridgeports and other versions of those types of mills in Jamie's shops and at ILM and at other places, but they still seemed to be a kind of an extravagant expense for what I was going to do. And then the other reason I bought it was because I finished Mythbusters. We wrapped Mythbusters at the end of 2015. Shocking. We wrapped in the end of 2015, and I bought this like earlier the following year, very quickly the following year, maybe even that year. And I bought this. There's a wonderful machine guy here in the Bay Area named Gary Aragon, and he's madman, and he's always got machine tools, and I trust Gary. I've bought some equipment from him before, and I said, do you have any mills that are in reasonable shape for this amount? And I gave him a kind of parameter, and it came with a few accessories. So I went with a vendor I trusted. That was my selection process. Sometimes you can go on Craigslist. There's one on Craigslist in the Bay Area right now that is literally called a cream puff mill because it was owned by the same person since the 70s. It's been sitting in their basement shop. They're selling it now for like $6 grand. And to be quite frank, if it is in as good a shape as they're representing, that is completely worthwhile. Mine well, all mills wear down in similar ways as you, literally in the ways, as you travel them back and forth to do milling operations, they tend to get more worn in the center, which gets more traffic, and they get a little tight out at the edges. If you ever see a mill you don't know and you wind it all the way to the end and you feel that you feel no extra resistance, that is a symbol that it has been very well cared for and very well maintained. Mine is getting long enough in the tooth where I probably will need to scrape its ways or replace it in the next couple of years. I am balancing those options. Yeah, the selection process is based upon the experience. So if I had to do this on Craigslist, I probably would set myself like a week to visit different places or spend a few weeks looking for those opportunities that seem like they're right. A million years ago, I missed out on an unbelievable purchase. My friend Jim Kent told me, oh, there's a guy selling his machine shop up in Petaluma. And I called the guy like an hour later and he said, yeah, I got this full machine shop. I'm looking to sell the whole thing for $3 grand. And I was like, really? $3 grand. It's like, I think he had a Clousing mill. Did Clousing ever make a mill? He had a beautiful mill, beautiful lathe. I saw pictures of all of it. And here's what happened. That's an incredible price. That's an incredible price. And I could not afford that, but I could figure out a way to afford that. So I said to him, I want it. And as he opened his garage door to like blow off all the equipment to take some pictures for me, and somebody walking past said, whoa, and they bought the whole thing for like 4,500 bucks, right out from under me. And still they got it for like a third of what it was worth. Every one of us has had one of those happen to us. It's part of the cost of being a maker, of like looking for good stuff, right? I'm sure every guitarist has the same kind of story. But if you were interested in machining, I wouldn't just run out and buy a Bridgeport mill. I would find yourself a way to access one and really understand if it's the tool for you. If you are really interested in machining and you could spend a couple of grand on a nice benchtop lathe mill combo like the compact versions, then that might be the way to go. But experience is the way in which you gain the knowledge in order to know what you're looking at. It's funny, when you don't know cars and you're buying a car, you call up a friend of yours, like, can you help me look at this car? Because you think there's some mystery. And then when you spend some time working on cars, you know there's not much mystery. You can actually see if an engine is in good shape and been well cared for. It's kind of hard to hide that. I hope that was useful. There is a second mill question, and I wanted to put that in here. I wanted to answer it at the same time because I think they're commensurate with each other. No. Ah, here we go. Steve Dellicarpini. Dellicarpini. That is a great name. I think your ancestors may share a name with two wonderful women that I went to high school with, Joanne Delcarpini and her sister. I know it's not Dellicarpini, but maybe Delcarpini is one of the versions of that got through Ellis Island. Okay. Hey, Adam, I was looking at getting my first mill sometime soon, and I'm curious about tooling and clamping. What pieces would you recommend getting to start? What are the essentials? This is a good question. And here we go. For clamping, just one of these basic clamping kits will do fine. There's nothing special about this. There's not. I expect that you could spend a lot on one of these at MSC, but you don't really need to. It's big hunks of metal that hold on to stuff. Later, as you become a better machinist, you will start to build some custom clamping jigs and figure out some really innovative ways to hold on to your work. But this is basically all you need as a clamping kit to start. And you don't have to get a super fancy one. Go ahead and get the cheap one. As you need better parts, you will assemble some better parts. Make sure that the T-slot size is correct for your mill. I'm here to tell you when it's not, it is a nightmare. Don't let that happen to you. And then this is basically a Tinker Toy kit for clamping, where you have something you want to clamp up here, you stick this, you stick one of these threaded rods in a T-slot. It goes in the T-slot of your mill. You put this over that. It rests here in the adjustable triangles, and there are many different sizes. And then you clamp down on that, and it holds down on stuff. Advice: whenever you're clamping on the mill and you're clamping onto a piece that you will see, you might want to use something like a piece of brass between the clamp and your piece so you don't mar the piece. As far as milling machine essentials, I mean, you want a basic set of end mills. You want a basic set of R8 collets, although I would hope that those would come with your R8 collet mill. I'm assuming you're talking about buying the same kind of mill I have, which is a pretty standard one. You want a drill chuck for that. And again, if you're buying it used, it ought to come with a bunch of this stuff. An assortment of end mills, an assortment of collets and tool holders. And then I'm going to do that as a separate tool tip. Annular Cutters. I just got turned on to Annular Cutters by John Knoll, based on a Tom Lipton video. And I'm going to do that as a separate tool tip later on this week. You said, what are the essentials? Okay, the essentials for a milling machine is in fact a longer video, but as far as a clamping kit and some end mills, that's mostly what you need to get started. Oh, you need a good vise. You need a good vise. And my advice for buying a vise is buy the best vise you can afford. It will pay back so many dividends. Buy the best vise you can afford. Yeah, you buy a cheap vise and the ends might move when you clamp. There's all sorts of ways in which a cheap vise can mess you up. 4-inch, 6-inch, 8-inch. I'm agnostic on that front. The size of vise is, if you're doing medium-sized work, a 6-inch vise is totally fine. But if you go and get a really nice vise, like a Kurt vise, and you can find them on Craigslist for pretty cheap, you will be so much happier than some cheapo vise made of Chinesium. You don't want that. I'm here to say. I lived for years with one, and when I finally upgraded to a better vise, everything was better. I played the saxophone many years ago and took lessons from a wonderful guy in New York. And one of the things he said about playing the saxophone is, the moment you find a mouthpiece that feels better than the one you're playing with, spend whatever it costs to buy that mouthpiece. He was unequivocal about that. Because it's such a personal thing, because it's so individual to the instrument and the player and the mouthpiece, when you find a combo that works, buy it. Doesn't matter how much it costs, he said, you will be happy with the purchase. And he was right. I went through 3 mouthpieces, and the last one I had was a metal one, and it really changed the way I played, and it worked with my embouchure, and it was terrific. The same thing goes for the vise. Buy the best vise that you can afford right now, and Craigslist is a great place to go looking. Thank you guys for the milling machine questions. Love talking about my milling machine. I will see you guys next time.